When you have two parks that start with the same part of the same name in the same chain, there's gonna be some comparisons made to one another. Kings Island in Mason, Ohio, and Kings Dominion in Doswell, Virginia are sister parks, and the comparable elements of these parks are undeniable. From the entrance to the towers to the park's cloned coasters, it's all there. Now, it's time to line these coasters up one-on-one and see who comes out on top. Here's another lineup battle. Let's start off with the clones or near clones. Great Pumpkin Coaster, Woodstock Express, Racer and Racer 75, Flight of Fear, and finally Backlot Sun Coaster. Now in my experience at both parks, the difference between these two were minimal, with Backlot maybe running a little bit better at Kings Dominion and Racer 75 being in a little worse shape than Racer. Now we'll call it an even draw across the board. Parks start out tied 2.5 to 2.5. Now next up is a ride that Kings Dominion has no answer for, Adventure Express. Now it's a fun but rough arrow mine train with some of the better theming for that style of ride. Kings Dominion gets half a point for the extra ride. The Beast versus Grizzly, the world's longest wooden roller coaster versus the 1982 clone wooden coaster for Kings Dominion. This one isn't very close. Now while both coasters are certainly rough, Grizzly is that special kind of rough. It's a really boring ride with some of the worst jackhammering moments out there. Now I take points off for the terrible entrance too, but the Beast is pretty hard to get to and off the path as well. Now the Beast is far from a perfect ride, but it has some really exciting and forceful moments, specifically the turn into that final helix that really shows off the ride's in-house built charm. Plus the night rides are as legendary as the coaster itself. Point Kings Island. And Vertigo versus Tumbili. The small scale and gimmicky coasters match up. Invergo is an inverted boomerang from Vekoma, while Tumbili is a new for 2022 SNS free spin coming to Kings Dominion. While Invertigo has the big drops and traditional inversions, the small scale free spin promises to really throw riders around in a more intense and smooth way. While the novelty has faded, I'll take a free spin over a boomerang any day of the week. Flying Ace Aerial Chase versus Apple Zapple. While we have a first gen family suspended coaster versus a Mock Rides Wild Mouse. Not very good either way, but I have to say that the Wild Mouse probably is a little more exciting, but it's definitely way less comfortable. For a family ride, give me the inverted family coaster, Point Kings Island. Bat versus Reptilian, formerly Avalanche. Next up is a pair of very unique ride models. The Bat is a aerodynamic suspended coaster, which is a dying breed that swings guests as it dives through the course that's built on the outskirts of Kings Island's property. Now the Bat has a surprising amount of intensity on certain elements, and it makes for a really fun ride that makes it a little easier to overlook that walk to the ride and the insanely slow lift hill. Now Reptilian is a freshly themed Mock Rides bobsled. The bobsled is fun for sure, and it gives a very different ride than your standard coaster. Now unfortunately, it's far more of a family coaster, and it doesn't quite supply that thrill of the Bat. Point Kings Island. Orion versus Intimidator 305. We have the Gigas, the big ones, the Skyline coasters. Worth 2 points, as these are probably two of the more important and noteworthy rides in the lineup. Now the rides are really polar opposites. Orion is a smooth and floater-filled B&M that really focuses on supplying a graceful, speed-filled out-and-back ride. I305 is Intamin's intensity machine. From drop to brakes, it's perhaps the most intense coaster in the world, known for grayouts and being a bit much for the average guest. Now while Orion is a great ride by any means, it doesn't really set itself apart from its smaller counterparts, including the one in the same park, Diamondback. While I305 uses that extra speed to put riders through an insanely unique and memorable ride. 2 points to Kings Dominion. Banshee versus Dominator. The B&M loopers, both longest in their respective models, face off here. Now Banshee is another hyper intense ride that submits riders to 7 strong inversions over 4,100 plus feet of track. Now in the back, it's nearly unrideable, but up front, it's one of the best invert experiences around. Dominator features a mere 5 inversions over 4,200 feet of track, which is a bit odd because the shorter floorless coasters feature up to 7. Now the ride is much smoother than Banshee, but also has a rattle in its own right. Now it comes down to real smoothness versus pacing and ride experience. While Dominator is a good to great floorless coaster, Banshee is simply a great coaster. Point to Kings Island. Mystic Timbers versus Twisted Timbers. The Timbers, one hybrid, one wood, one RMC, one GCI. Both are small scale coasters that focus on airtime, a two-pointer for arguably the two best rides in either park. While Twisted Timbers has its inversions, larger camelbacks, and overlapping layout, Mystic is an out and back run through the woods. Twisted features more sustained airtime, while Mystic has more pops, start and end a little quicker, and more rapid succession. Now, Twisted is no slouch in pacing or rapid elements either, and both rides are equally butterly smooth. Now, they are the closest matchup in this entire battle, with two true elite coasters. They currently rank 5th and 7th on my overall list, but the top spot here has to go to Twisted Timbers. The addition of the inversions, plus a larger mix of both sustained and rapid airtime moments, give it the 2-point edge. Diamondback versus Anaconda. Now, neither park has a good answer for either of these rides, but they're both themed to snakes, so there's that. Now, it isn't too much of a fair fight here for the deciding point, unfortunately. Now, Anaconda is overhated for sure, but it still isn't very good. Now, the rough transitions throughout, the mediocre inversions, it all leads to an extremely boring second half. While Diamondback is one of the better B&M hypers around, despite its strong rattle. The airtime is really unmatched by any B&M I've ridden to this point. Now, unfortunately, this is quite an easy point for Kings Island to wrap it up to win by a score of 8 to 7.5. Now, that's going to wrap up this lineup battle. Let me know if there's any of these matchups that should have gone the other way, or which two lineups you'd like to see next. Now, it's a big shame here that not having Volcano or its replacement for King's Dominion. But anyway, till next time, that's all from the shores of Island Coasters.